Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Just wanted to do a quick episode on the state committee meeting for the Democratic Party of Georgia that I just attended yesterday. Wanted to give a report out on what I did, or what I kind of heard, what the vibe of the room was, and how kind of all that is going. So if you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or if you want me to talk about any specific topics, upcoming videos or episodes, please comment down below and let me know. So starting off, they had a morning session. Essentially, it was just kind of a report out of what they had been doing from a coordinated campaign committee. So one of the things that they talked about was a lot of the Public Service Commission, the two seats that were won there, as well as some of the House districts that we had talked about in this channel already, and just kind of giving a little bit of that. And then one of the races that just concluded down near Macon that we're going to talk a lot about. So, one example of some of the stuff that they had been doing is they are planning on getting about an additional $2 million in funding that they're hoping to raise. I know Charlie Baker or Bailey. He is the chair. He talks a lot about kind of how a lot of these funds are going to be going towards some Metro Atlanta counties. So be on the lookout for those. That's Rockdale, DeKalb, Fulton, Cobb, Gwinnett, Forsyth, and there's probably a few other ones there that I'm missing, like Fayetteville or Fayette County. So definitely going to be investing there, as well as making sure that some of the other regions, such as down in Savannah, um, Richmond County over near Augusta, and down in Columbus, and some of those other areas in Macon, are going to be getting a little bit of investment as well. But predominantly, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be running up the numbers in Metro Atlanta, primarily because of John Ossoff, and they've got governor, lieutenant governor, and all those kind of races coming up. So they want to make sure that they're driving turnout in their big population areas that are their strongholds, so that they can kind of keep winning and hopefully get them over 50%. It looks good. Honestly, it looks like they've got a great shot, especially with Ossoff. Doesn't look like really any major strong contenders on that front. The primary is still kind of a little bit undecided of where that's going to go on the Republican side. However, on the governor's side, it's going to be a little bit more interesting. A friend of mine who I actually saw at the committee meeting, who we've done a video with her here, Wendy Davis. She's the deputy campaign manager for Keisha Lance Bottoms. She's kind of the front runner for the Georgia lieutenant governor's race. So making sure that you've got really top people on the federal as well as the state level ballots, so that you can have top to bottom wins and top to bottom turnouts and everything like that. Talked about this a lot in future videos or on previous videos. Usually about 8% is kind of how much of an overperformance we're seeing. I expect that to come down to maybe like a 6%, depend as long as we don't go to war with Iran and some of these other kind of things. I would expect that, as well as if the economy doesn't get worse and things like that. I would expect somewhere around 6%, maybe 4 to 6% of a overperformance, which in Georgia would put Democrats over by about 1%, maybe 1.5 to 2%. Ossoff, who kind of won pretty big last time, or won decently last time, I wouldn't be surprised if he won with, like, say, 55% of the vote or more. So just something to kind of think about. They're definitely funding there and doing a lot. So some of the what we talked a little bit about before. I'm going to see if I can get Charlie on here just to kind of talk about this from his side. But he came in 2025. A bunch of kind of stuff was happening in the DPG, the change of the chair, how he structured everything. And since he came in 2025, $3 million have been raised. So in just over a year, about 3 million has been raised. A lot of this was for public service commissions and things like that. They've got, I think they said they had about $1 million cash on hand. So they've been spending a good bit of that. They're looking at about 75,000 each month that they're bringing in, and then or 75,000 additional that they've been bringing in since he became chair. So he's doing really good on that. Big earnings areas that are going to be coming up here. As soon as I get this information, I'm going to be letting everyone know, because it's just a considerable amount. In 2025, $500,000 was raised at the Carter Lewis dinner. For those who don't know, it's the big dinner with John, who basically built on John Lewis and um, Jimmy Carter. So they kind of combined it. It's a big turnout, huge Democratic constituencies and things like that that happened there. $500,000 was raised in 2025. I would expect just as much, if not even more, is going to be raised this year, especially with John Ossoff, Raphael Warnock. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Keisha Lance Bottoms comes. And then I think they said, oh, they're having Andy Bashir come in and do you know, a keynote as well. So definitely some big hitters coming in. Definitely going to be raising a lot of money. Um, Definitely just putting a lot of pressure on Republicans in the upcoming elections, and if really is putting a lot of Republicans kind of to the back or on their backs. One of which that we talked a lot about at the committee meeting was that. I think it was the one that I have not done yet. It's down. I think it's Senate District 21 down near Macon. Republicans threw everything at it. I think they spent maybe about $1 million on it, if not there in other districts. And I think they did about the same up in the Roswell district that we talked about with Deborah Shingley. Spending about $1 million. And these are like R plus 20 something districts, R plus 15 districts, and you're putting about $1 million in it just to kind of stay competitive. So big wins for the Democrats on that end, really kind of keeping the momentum going. They seem to be doing really, really well to kind of get them to where they need to be. The big thing that I will say is they have really high top line targets. So, on this channel, I want to give people kind of the honest perspective from what I'm seeing. Definitely huge kind of top line numbers with the governor, as well as with their senators. So they're definitely putting a lot there. My concerns are going to be with attorney general. I think that's going to be decently competitive. Same thing with secretary of state, and with uh, one of the other ones. With those are going to be the big ones that people can kind of be looking at. I could see, getting the governor, but not getting some of these other ones, just because you only know how far down coattails are going to go. When you start talking about labor secretary or labor commissioner, as well as ag commissioner, was a big one that they had talked about. Really, they were struggling to get like an agricultural commissioner uh, for the state. So I suspect maybe you'll see top line Democrats, competitive mid level, and then Republicans with labor and probably some of the further ones down the ballot. Unless, obviously, like we said, unless someone really overperforms and does all that kind of stuff. So that's something to be looking out for. That's kind of my initial estimation of what's going to happen. People talk about turning the House blue. I don't think that's going to happen. I still think Republicans are going to have a majority in the legislature branch, at least for probably till 2032. Um, and this election is going to be key for that too. So when we think about like drawing of new maps and stuff like that, if Democrats can get in now and they can kind of maintain their advantage through 2030, then they're going to be in prime position, or Keisha would be in prime position, or whoever it is will be in prime position to then be able to be able to help in redrawing some of those maps with redistricting and gerrymandering and those kind of things that are going to happen in 2030, but then it's going to get implemented in 32. So definitely some key things to be looking out for there. The other race that I was just thinking about was lieutenant governor. They've got really strong candidates, I'd say, for those top two or three. Um, Tanya Miller is one who, Democratic minority leader. I've got a relationship with her, and I'll be doing an episode on her here soon. And I've been working with her on one bill in the state house, and just it's more bipartisan on that, which is why I've been involved. They've got Josh McLaurin running for, I believe, lieutenant governor, and then you've got a slew of candidates running for secretary of state. A few of them I just don't remember off the top of my head, but they've got some decently strong candidates there. So I'd expect that's probably where we're going to see maybe kind of that drop off, right? Is once you start getting to secretary of state, and maybe attorney general. I can see those kind of being more competitive. You may see one go one way, one go the other, especially with Brad Raffensperger and Gabe Sterling. I've met Gabe down at the Capitol. He's from Sandy Springs, so we kind of know of each other a little bit on that end. So with kind of Republicans kind of really being anti-Trump on that, I could see maybe kind of that race kind of going either way on that. So definitely something kind of to be interesting to see. Like you said, if anything majorly bad happens, we could see some more shifts. But yeah, so overall, I would say momentum in the Democratic Party is strong. I think that's been well articulated. A lot of funding from inside the state, outside the state. Um, Republicans seem to be a little bit demoralized right now. And I think that, definitely in prime position for Democrats to take advantage and finally strike the People's Mansion on that, and get a governor, which would really change a lot of how the state's going to be run from top to bottom. It's really going to put Republicans more in the minority and having to work with Democrats, which I think could really go a long way in terms of maybe getting some of these policy issues. One big one that say some more pro-choice people would talk about is, once you have governor, then maybe you can kind of get some Medicaid as well as some Medicaid expansion, as well as maybe some more abortion rights to be kind of put in there, especially if you do have a female governor. I could see some of those kind of being priorities as well. So definitely something to keep a lookout on. It was very interesting on that front. Additionally, a little bit kind of in that, I did go to the candidate recruitment meeting just to kind of see kind of what they've got. I think they're strong, but they are still missing. And I talked about the ag secretary here. They're definitely missing some key positions in office, right? They even acknowledged it. Like they want people who are farmers and people who work in ag to be agricultural secretary, and they don't really have a strong footing in that space. Labor, they have some decent people coming out for there, but really nothing with a strong coalition that's already formed or anything, I would say, to even really kind of be overly competitive. So that's some stuff that I kind of got from there. They've got quite a few state house and state senate seats that are being contended. So that's going to obviously kind of hurt them in kind of being able to see what they can flip. That's also another thing with the candidate recruitment. A lot of people, since primaries are still going on, they did have some people who are running come up and talk about their election and everything like that they're doing. Quite a few people, I would say, talked a lot about, especially those in Metro Atlanta. One was in Sewanee, and some people, especially kind of in Forsyth, Gwinnett, kind of North Fulton area. A lot of them have been there for a while. I think it was Greg Dolezal running for lieutenant governor. Um, he was one, and some of these others that are pretty conservative, and they just have been there for a while. They've got strong seats that they can sit in, and they've seen their kind of margins get eaten away just from the shift from the state. They've got strong fundraising. Greg, I know, has been someone who's been superly fundraising. He's been working with Rick McCormick and kind of a lot of those guys as well in the North Fulton area. So definitely kind of helping them out and kind of sharing power and sharing connections as much as they can. So with the candidate recruitment, a lot of them were saying that they're going to be able to flip these seats. I'm still a little skeptical. It really just is going to depend on how much penetration you see. A few of them, they say they're going to be competitive, um, but it's almost kind of like they're competitive. They're maybe like R+3 or R+4, and because you've had an incumbent, they've been pretty safe seats. But now that you have this huge Democratic advantage, and some of them have been leaving for seats. I think one of them was also left to go run for Margaret Taylor Greene's seat over in Marietta, Cobb County, and that kind of area up there. You know, People say that they're going to be able to kind of finally get these things to switch. I would probably take the under on it. I would say, if they've got, I think they said there's about 8 flippable seats. I would say they're probably going to get two or three um, of those, just because of a lot of North Atlanta, and especially in the Sewanee and those kind of areas. Yeah, they're becoming bluer because demographics are changing, but I don't think that. You still have to have good candidates, and I don't know if I would say some of the candidates running are going to be as strong as maybe they leading themselves to be. I don't know them very well, so I can't speak too much on it, but just something I kind of thought of. Next one that I went out was a breakout session, led by or this one specifically was for Young Dems. That one I thought was pretty interesting. What they really talked about, and I'd say probably the big takeaway was it was more of a working session than it was like a breakout, right? While they were there, it was probably about an hour and a half of like, how do young Dems start building that community and getting young Dems and young voters plugged in and getting them, into the party, getting them mobilized, getting them organized, and getting them out to vote. A lot of them were just like, "Hey, how do you do that?" Like just skills-based training. I really appreciated that. I thought a lot of it was really good. Relational organizing. I've got some on here talking about delegating and whatnot. There was at least probably about 35 to 40 young Dems. Usually, young Dems don't go to these things just because there's not too much for them to do, especially if they're not someone like me who, knows more of kind of what's happening in the actual broader general session. A lot of them are just kind of there to help make connections and just kind of start, you know, very early in their career, more on the organizing side than actually kind of trying to shift policy. So a lot of them, 35 to 40 of them, kind of doing skills-based sessions and developing those skills and really putting an emphasis on that, could go quite a long way. They talked, one of the young Dems there talked about the tour that they did. I think they hit about um, six campuses within Georgia, just kind of doing like a college tour of talking about, what they do and trying to get people organized and getting them mobilized and all that kind of stuff on college campuses. One of the seats that flipped was in Athens, Clark County. One of the guys there won by like 50.47% of the vote. So very narrow margins. And, that's where that young vote's really going to help out. Same thing with Metro Atlanta. Same thing with Marietta and those areas that we had talked about being a potential with Kennesaw State being a pretty good sized university up there. Georgia Tech, Emory down there, obviously. Um, so definitely going to be seeing a lot. One thing that I was surprised by is you definitely saw a good bit of Savannah representation. Not just for the young Dems, but I think just overall, a lot of people kind of more towards Savannah being mobilized. So I would be kind of interested to see if anything happens on on that end. I think there is a candidate whose seat opened up in that end, and it might be like kind of Savannah, outskirts of Savannah and Augusta. So that could be something that could be a target in the upcoming years, especially if Democrats keep shifting and Savannah and those areas start kind of growing more. So last thing I wanted to talk about was really just kind of the general session. So one of the things they did, they talked about kind of everything that they're doing, Pledge Allegiance, quorum, approval of minutes, all that kind of stuff. They talked about Sean Harris. So Sean Harris is running in Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat. I think he ran in 2022 or 2024. He is a military vet, brigadier general. He's a farmer, all this other kind of stuff. He lives in kind of more rural Georgia. And so one of the things that he is doing is he's running for the congressional seat there. There's three Democrats and something like 15 Republicans that are running. I don't remember if Trump has had any endorsements there, but Sean Harris is running, and they wanted to give an endorsement to him since the other two Democrats were kind of like independents slash people who were Republicans and have moved over to Democrats. He was someone who had been continually a Democrat, been involved in some of the Democratic stuff happening recently, so they wanted to kind of do a endorsement vote for him. So that was approved. I think only nine people, said no out of like the 150 something state committee members who voted. Which is another thing I would say is I think they had something like I think they said somewhere close to about 300 people to 250 to 300 people actually attended, which I had been to a few of these before just to kind of report out on like what they're doing and to really kind of provide you all insight. With the numbers that have come in, that's pretty standard. I would say there's probably about the same amount of people who went to the last one that I went to, which was in Macon. So definitely good numbers out on that. Potentially a little bit of growth. I've seen this one was definitely more enthusiasm, more like, hey, we're building on that. I think a lot of that is because of Charlie Bailey kind of coming in and taking over his chair compared to Nikema Williams. So definitely some growth. I think things are changing, and if this is the stuff that's going to keep happening in the upcoming years, I can see Georgia definitely being somewhere where, not necessarily in North Carolina. I could see them kind of even going further than North Carolina. I could see them being maybe like a New Mexico in a sense, where it's like they're just slightly over. They're maybe like a 52, 53, 54, 55 percent seat. So, a good lean. Democrat and Republicans obviously will be a little bit more competitive then. So definitely going to be strong. Definitely going to be something that I think Republicans need to keep in mind, and just kind of be thinking about it, trying to see where they're losing. I think Georgia Republicans have been very strong. Brian Kemp was a strong governor. He beat Stacey Abrams, who was probably the best person who could have run against him twice, and beat one more the second time than the first time. So the Republican Party in Georgia is not destroyed, I think, as a lot of people think. I think that they are just kind of at the whims of more national politics and what's changing there. So I think things could come back, especially if Trump gets out and you've got a Democrat. I could see kind of like a Tea Party wave number 2 come back, where Republicans come back stronger, or if Democrats come in and don't really seem to be able to hold Trump to account in 2026. I could see 2028 and 2030 being more competitive years. So just want to let everyone know what was kind of happening. No major things on officer reports or closing remarks or anything like that happened. So just wanted to let everyone know, and definitely Georgia's looking interesting. It's definitely going to be a fight. I don't think we're going to see the same turnouts that we saw before. I think Republicans are going to kind of get their act together a little bit. But I think that definitely have an uphill battle. And I think Democrats are going to have some momentum. And for them, it's about staying on message, trying to get better candidates where they need to, and starting to chip away from the top down. They've got the Senate seats. Now they got the governor in that top half of the executive branch. Now they got that bottom, or they're going to need to then get the bottom, and that'll trickle down into the House and Senate seats. So if you like what we're doing, if you like what I'm doing, I drove about 3 hours to go in and do this. So if you like what I'm doing, if you want to hear more, if you want to just know a little bit more about it, or just chat a little bit more, put something down in the comments, and I'll get back to you. I'm trying to respond to everybody who's doing it. So if you have anything that you want to talk about, let me know. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks.